What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new, my name's Chris and here we explore products, places, and things that help us live a more enjoyable life. Ever since buying the Aethos, a lot of people have asked me, how does the Aethos compare to the Tarmac SL7? So today I want to run through that, offer my opinion on both of these bikes, and maybe which bike is suited for which rider. As always, my videos don't feature a ton of technical specifications. I think the brand websites and other websites out there can offer those. I offer my perspective from a husband, father, business owner, guy who rides 7,500 miles a year, enjoys smashing the pedals with friends, but who isn't collecting a paycheck for riding a bike. I just got back from Mammoth Lakes, California, which is an incredible place to train, ride, and explore. In the summer, it's a world-class destination for gravel, road, and mountain biking. Being that it's January, everyone was up there with skis and snowboards. I, of course, brought the Aethos because I wanted to get a better idea of how it climbed and descended, especially at 8,500 feet. I can tell you that the climb was phenomenal, and the descent, well, I wasn't really able to go full gas because there were a ton of icy spots. Nonetheless, I was still able to rail it around a few corners and it handles like a champ, just as I had expected. Let's start with a high-level overview of both of these bikes, and we'll begin with the Tarmac. My Tarmac is basically an S-Works level build with a few tweaks. When the new Tarmac came out in summer 2020, I was already riding an S-Works Venge disc, so I just bought the SL7 frame set and swapped all the parts over from my Venge onto the Tarmac. That's why you see that my Tarmac build has the Revolve CLX 64 wheels and it has a Venge stem on it. Now that Venge stem has since been put on the Aethos and replaced with a normal Tarmac stem, but most of the photos that you will see here and videos are going to have the Tarmac with the Venge stem. Additionally, I installed a ceramic speed bottom bracket and ceramic speed pulleys, the non-coated version, and the normal side pulleys, not the oversized pulleys. I'm currently running the 32mm GP5000 tubeless tires, but typically year-round I run the 28mm GP5000 tubeless tires. I love those tires, I think they're great. The Aethos, on the other hand, started out as a stock SRAM E-Tap Axis build, the same one that you see on the website. I quickly swapped out the Revolve Alpinist wheels for a set of Indy 4.5 AR discs, and I'm riding those now with the Goodyear Eagle F1 Super Sports in 32mm. I swapped out the stem from the SL stem to the Venge stem that was previously on my Tarmac because I needed something that was in 120mm and there just wasn't any shop around that had one, but I rather like the look of it, so I'm gonna keep it on there. And I have swapped out the chain rings from a 4835 to a 5037. Oh, and I also swapped the saddle from a power saddle to the Pro Stealth carbon saddle. All in all, this bike now weighs a whopping 16.25 pounds for those who are keeping track. Let's talk aesthetics and let's begin with the Tarmac. When the Tarmac SL7 was first released, I immediately liked it. I had a ton of friends who were on the SL6 and they always told me it was a phenomenal bike and that it handled so well and that it was fast. And while I believed them and I'm sure it was fantastic, I just didn't really care for the look of it. I always liked the Venge more. I always liked the integrated cable look. It looked faster, meaner, sexier, if you will. So when the new Tarmac had kind of like blended the SL6 and the Venge together to make the Tarmac SL7, I was immediately attracted to it. I liked the sleek design of it. I liked that it kind of looked like the Venge, but like a Venge on a diet. And I was just a big fan. The look of the Tarmac was very familiar to me. I had previously had a Venge Lunch Race, a Cervelo S5, I had a Venge Vias rim brake, if you remember that bike. I had a few different Venge discs, and so when the new Tarmac came out, it just looked and felt like home. Now, fast forward 18 months since that bike has come out, and I can't say that I'm as enamored with the look as I was when it originally came out. I think the look of the aero bike is a little bit played out. Everyone these days is on aero bikes. Every group ride has a bunch of guys on aero bikes. It doesn't matter if you're fast, if you're competitive, if you're a strong contender on a group ride, or if you're a guy who literally is just getting into the sport and learning how to clip in, you've got an aero bike. And so I think the aero bike look has kind of lost a little bit of that unique feeling to it. It's not quite as special as it used to be. Hence, the Aethos. When the Aethos was first introduced shortly after the SL7, I immediately wrote it off. Exposed cables, round bars, shallow wheels, like we're going back in time. Like, what are you gonna tell me next, that Cavendish is like winning races again? Oh wait, he is. Look, the Aethos just didn't do it for me. It wasn't until I started to notice that everyone was on an aero bike, and it wasn't until I bought the Crux that I started to give the Aethos a second look. One of the things that I loved about having the Venge is that all of my friends had Tarmacs, and I had a bike that was just a little bit different. It allowed me to have some kind of individuality in this sea of tarmacs where everybody was riding the same bike and everybody was competing and talking about how their bikes were exactly the same. I had something that was a little bit heavier, maybe a little bit more aerodynamic, but overall it just looked different. So on a surface level, I felt like the Venge kind of won just based on looks alone. And so for those same reasons, the Aethos started to grow on me. I looked at the Aethos and I started to envision what it could be. If I added some deeper wheels, if I added a bulkier stem, if I maybe swapped the saddle, I felt like I could make the Aethos look like a bike that fit me without looking like every other tarmac. And now I really, really like the look. There are parts of it that are still growing on me, like that slanted top tube, but overall I like it. I like the understated nature of the Aethos. For once in my life, I'm riding a bike that doesn't feel like a massive billboard. And for me, there's a lot of value there. Let's move on to ride experience, and we'll begin with the Tarmac. Having come from a Venge and being very reluctant to jump ship from the Venge to the Tarmac, I have to say that the Tarmac is leaps and bounds above the Venge. My initial ride impressions were that the Tarmac was better than the Venge in almost every single category. It really checked all the boxes. If you ask any of my friends, they will tell you that I have been a huge evangelist for the SL7. I think it's a fantastic bike. Have any of you ever had that feeling where you ride your bike so much that you almost feel like you're one with the bike? I know that's a really cheesy phrase, but I feel like with the Tarmac, I understand how the bike will perform with every single input that I give it. Especially when I'm training a ton during the summer, I feel like I know the Tarmac so well, better than any bike I've ever ridden, and it responds exactly like I want it to every single time. If I'm climbing and I shift my weight, I know how it's going to respond. If I'm descending and I shift just a little bit to the left, to the right, I know exactly where the bike is going to go. Acceleration, climbing, responsiveness, handling, all get a nearly 10 out of 10 in my book when it comes to this bike. And in terms of comfort, I've ridden the Tarmac on 2 separate occasions in the only race that I do that happens to be over 200 miles. And we really like train and race for this race. It's not like a double century where you're just kind of hanging out and eating hot dogs and hamburgers along the way. Both times that I rode the Tarmac in that race, I finished 3rd and 5th in my respective groups at a time of around 9 hours and 30 minutes. And that's like 9 hours and 30 minutes nonstop. And the Tarmac performed flawlessly each time. So if the Tarmac is so great and it's a 10 out of 10 and I'm like this evangelist for the SL7, why would I go to the Aethos? Boils down to 2 words: individuality and curiosity. When you first jump on the Aethos, you notice how quickly it spins up and how responsive it is. Compared to the Tarmac, it's a smoother acceleration and responsiveness in a good way for the average rider like myself. If there's any bit of twitchiness with the Tarmac SL7, it's simply not found with the Aethos. It's like a more refined handling and acceleration and responsiveness. That's probably due to the frame not being quite as stiff. So I mean, if you're looking for a crit bike, I don't think the Aethos would be your first choice. When it comes to speed, the Aethos simply doesn't feel as fast as the Tarmac. But what's bizarre is if you look at your Garmin or your Wahoo, you're still going the same speed. It's just that the Aethos doesn't feel as fast. And I think that boils down to how the Aethos absorbs the road. See, on the Tarmac, it's like you feel every bump and every imperfection of the road, and it's like they're moving below you very quickly. With the Aethos, it's like buttery smooth. You just don't feel all of that. And so therefore, I think that's why it feels like you're going slower. But if you look at your Wahoo, your Garmin, you're really going the same speed with the same output. I love the way the Aethos climbs. It's on par with the Tarmac. Now, my Aethos build is not this super ultralight climber's dream experience type of bike. There's only about 1.5 pounds that separates the Aethos from the Tarmac. And when you're climbing back to back on both bikes, I don't think that you really notice a difference. It's almost negligible. I'm sure if you were to do like a blind placebo test of both of these bikes, you would have people say that they climb differently, but no one would come out saying like, oh, this one's like a phenomenal climber and this one's like a tank. I think they both climb exceptionally well. Where the Aethos beats the Tarmac is handling. I'm just gonna come out and say it, I think it's the best handling bike that I've ever ridden. You can bury the Aethos into corners and it's confidence inspiring and forgiving at the same time. I think they've struck a balance on the stiffness of this frame that allows you to kind of lean into the bike in corners using the flex of the frame to your advantage, if that makes any sense at all. I feel like it's kind of one of those things that you have to ride to understand. The Aethos does everything the Tarmac does, it just does it in a smoother and more refined fashion, whereas the Tarmac gives you an immediate response and it's a little bit less forgiving. If these two were cars, I would say that the Tarmac is like a 911 Turbo S in Sport Plus mode, whereas the Aethos is a 911 Turbo in Sport mode. Both incredibly fast, but the latter being more practical for everyday use. Let's talk about value for both of these bikes, and I want to get one argument out of the way very quickly, and that is that both of these bikes are totally overkill, because they are. But look, so is that truck that you're driving that has a payload capacity of 10,000 pounds, or the car that you're driving that has 300 horsepower, or the phone that you're probably watching this on that takes phenomenal pictures that you're never going to print. We all buy these things based on perceived value, and I think that we have to look at these bikes through that lens. Most of us would argue that we get a lot of enjoyment out of these bikes, whether it's physical exercise, whether it's social, whether it's the competitiveness with your friends, maybe it's just getting outside and being away from your computer and getting a break that allows you to think and be more productive throughout the day. I truly do believe that these bikes do have incredible value to each of us individually in our lives. That being said, I think we're fooling ourselves if we think that we're gonna lose a county line sprint or we're gonna lose a finish at a group ride because we have Dura Ace versus Ultegra or SRAM Force versus Red. I just think that that boils down to an individual choice of what your budget is and what it is that you want out of your bike. With both of these bikes, I think the Expert and Pro models are truly the better value. If you can get the S-Works build, go ahead, do it, that's great. But I think if you just look at it from a value perspective, I think the bang for your buck that you get out of those is excellent. Sure, there's a little bit more weight, but you know what? Some of those components that are kind of like mid-tier or like upper mid-tier, they also last a lot longer too because they're not using such unique materials and construction that you get a lot more mileage out of them as well. Comparing the value of these two bikes, this is where I feel like the Aethos struggles a little bit. See, if the Aethos is the bike that's built for the rider and the Tarmac is the bike that's built for the racer, well, does the rider really need a bike that's this expensive? And I think that's kind of the conundrum with the Aethos. If it's truly built for the rider, it should be more attainable for the rider and should be significantly less expensive. So with that in mind, I think the Tarmac, with all of its race features and aero, more so justifies, and I use that word very hesitantly, its price tag. If you were to look at these two bikes in terms of cars, and you had a 911 Turbo and a 911 Turbo S, and they were both the same price, wouldn't you say that the Turbo S is a better value? So it is with the Tarmac. So which is best for you and for me, because I'm in the same boat as you? I think it depends on your riding style. If you're planning to race, or if you want a bike that will allow you to race and get all those performance advantages, I think the Tarmac is best for you. It's gonna do everything for you. You're gonna be able to crush it in group rides. You're gonna have an advantage on race day because it's gonna handle really well. It's gonna be comfortable, it's gonna accelerate, you're gonna be able to sprint. That's the Tarmac, right? If you want something to just go out on local group rides, you're not really planning on racing, or maybe you're gonna race once or twice a year, the Aethos might be right for you. If you want something with a little bit more tire clearance, the Aethos also might be right for you. I know some people are using the Aethos as like a do-it-all bike, kind of like the Crux. I would advise against that based on my experience, but I know there are those out there who want to throw 35mm tires on the Aethos and go crush some light gravel. I can say that you can't do that on the Tarmac. I think the Tarmac maxes out at like 32mm. So if that's what you want to do, the Aethos is best for you. If you want something that's a little bit more unique, that maybe has a different style, I think the Aethos may be right for you. And if you want to wrench on your own bikes and you dread working with integrated cables, then definitely the Aethos is for you. I don't think that you can go wrong with either of these bikes. They're both excellent, but I think they each serve a different purpose, although there is quite a bit of overlap between each bike. So what did I decide? Well, the Tarmac is for sale and the Aethos will be my bike for 2022. See, with the addition of the NV45 ARs and a few other modifications, I feel like I've gotten the Aethos to perform and feel almost like the Tarmac, but with two major benefits, and that is one, handling. I love the way the Aethos handles, and two, the Aethos is unique. Everyone around me rides an SL7, so now I've got something that's a little bit different, just like I had the Venge back in the day, and it stood out in a sea of Tarmacs. And guess what? Even with all the fancy aero and tech features, I can still take some pretty hard pulls on the local group rides, and it's an absolute blast of a bike to have. Look, as I gathered my thoughts for this video, I went back and forth as to which one is the better bike. I'd think about the SL7 and how much I love that bike, and I'd have like this buyer's remorse for the Aethos, thinking there's no way that this bike could ever top the SL7. And then I'd think about the Aethos and how much I enjoy riding it, how much I enjoy descending on it, and how much I enjoy just hammering it into a corner. And I just wanted to get out and ride, and I reminded myself that I just don't have room for these two bikes, and really I just can't justify it. Both of these bikes are incredible. You truly can't go wrong. I think it boils down to riding style, individuality, and what you want out of your bike. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, comments, drop me a line on Instagram or a comment below. If you'd like to see more videos, hit that subscribe button. See you soon.